Views and opinions of any of the guests of After Hours AM are not necessarily the views and opinions of After Hours AM, its hosts, its staff, or any of its affiliates.
Welcome to the After Hours program.
Are you
Now broadcasting live from the After Hours AM studio, Joel Sturgis and Eric Olson.
And good evening and welcome to this post-Halloween edition of After Hours AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me,
Eric Olson and
Heidi Hollis.
And good evening, guys. I'm going to assume you guys all had at least a survivable Halloween. Survivable. There we go. Survivable Halloween. And because you're all here on radio with me. So you're not coming in as EVP, so I'm going to assume you're alive.
yes, indeedy.
Okay, good. Good. You know, because Halloween can go either way.
Truly. Somehow.
Truly.
Well, in our neighborhood, sadly, we are on it's not like a highway or anything, but it is a two-lane divided, or not divided, but two-lane road, and it's very, very busy, and there's no sidewalk. So in the 16 years now that we have lived in this house, I guess it's probably our 15th Halloween because we moved around Thanksgiving.
12 people have died on the highway.
Ooh.
We have had 0 trick-or-treaters, so we don't have to hang around.
Oh.
And when the kids were younger, of course, we'd go elsewhere. There's a nice big development right behind us, so we've been there several times. We've been to where my parents were in Walden several times. Kind of hopped around, had a good time. But now my youngest is 14 and
Not interested anymore, right? In trick-or-treating?
not feeling
No.
that it was appropriate to go out trick-or-treating. So the three of us
What's the
went
age?
to see Halloween.
Yeah, well, what's the age limit now in trick-or-treating, do you guys
About
think?
14, I think.
Oh, see, I know the number isn't 44 because I got some weird looks when I had
How
that
would
out.
they know under the mask?
Well,
Really,
yeah,
there's some
yeah.
12-year-olds that are 6 foot tall. I mean, you know, I had some as some of my patients, and they had a mustache and over 6 feet tall, and he was 12.
True.
Some early development there.
That's
time.
very early development.
You guys will get a kick out of this story. You know what he told me once? He's like, you know, I went into McDonald's for the first time by myself, and the lady asked, "Sir, how can I help you?" And I ran away. She didn't realize I was little. I am not kidding you. That was his story.
Wow. Just.
That's funny that he called himself little.
Yeah, right?
Young, meaning young. That's
Yeah.
He was little.
So,
Like, dude.
yeah, well, that's just it. You know, you just don't know anymore with all the growth hormones put in food. You don't know how old they are. So, you know, it's.
Let's eat. They say kids are acting like they're older. Well, their body's telling them they are because of all the hormones.
That is absolutely correct. You hit the nail right on the head. I'm a firm believer that in all these hormones that we have pumped into food for the last, 50 years are starting to affect development on a cellular and DNA level. That the genie's out of the bottle. It's going to continue this way, whether or not you take it away at this point or not. It's done. The die is cast.
Size of kids' feet. Those are flippers they're walking around on. Those aren't feet.
They'd be great at swimming. They should all join the swim team. All right, I hear now, Heidi, that you have some great stories to share with us.
Great? Well, I don't know.
Well, that's the rumor now. I don't want to set you up too hard for failure, but
I just grabbed some random little short, weird stories that people have shared online, and I just thought that they might be quick and cute.
Please share.
Okay. So this one says, I was sitting alone in my living room when I heard a thud from the bedroom. I went to check it out and saw the bottom drawer of my dresser just sitting on the floor. I went to put the drawer back in, and found a pill bottle. I thought, great, my fiance's doing drugs.
Again.
After I examined the bottle more, I found that it didn't have any pills in it.
Oh.
It had his dad's ashes.
Oh.
His family divided his father's ashes up in pill bottles so that everybody could spread ashes in different places.
How big of a family is this? Because, man, there's a lot of ashes there left.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And they said, weird, I know, but not my family at this point, so I didn't care. My fiance had been too upset to spread the last of his father's ashes, so he had hidden them for close to a year. I like to think his dad was letting me know he was being kept for far too long.
Oh, that's kind of bittersweet. You know, the dad's reaching out, I guess, saying, hey, spread me already. I'm sick of being crammed in this drawer.
Isn't that crazy?
It's horrible. It's dark.
So Dad hopped out, huh?
Dad hopped out and said, hello, you forgot something? I'm in the sock drawer.
Wow.
Jeez. Yeah.
That's something else. That is something else. All right. That's kind of cool little story. It really is.
Yes. And now I got another short one. Okay, this one says, when I was about 8 years old, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a small bar of light dancing up and down on the heater. I was scared poopless. I'll just say poopless. After a while, something spoke my name.
Oh, okay, I gotta stop you right there. That's one of my biggest fears, to be laying in bed and hear, Joel, come to the closet, Joel. We're waiting for you. That's actually one of my fears.
It's me, Eric.
That's oddly enough, I've had that dream where it's Eric. I'm like, Eric, what are you doing in my closet? I don't know, just hanging here. No, I'm kidding.
One of these days I have to visit.
Yeah, you should. You should come to beautiful Minnesota. I need to get to Cleveland, too. It's been too long since I've been to beautiful Ohio. Okay.
There's plenty going on.
There's lots going on.
Okay, to continue. After a while, something spoke my name, and then they put ... my full name. It wasn't just Joel. It was Joel Sturgis.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine that?
That would freak me the hell out. I would be moving.
Like, Mom, is that you? It's like only moms say your full name, right?
Only that and my first grade teacher.
Oh, yeah. But first, middle, and last name, I wonder if it was...
Ooh, that means you're in big trouble. You better start running away or groveling, one of the two.
Like Joel Sebastian Sturgis?
Sebastian!
Eric Peter Olson?
Peter.
Come on.
Christopher.
Christopher, I think. Oh my goodness, I'm not sharing my name.
What would you do? You're making fun of us, Heidi, but what would you do if you heard, Heidi Hollis, what are you doing?
What kind of... I would think the ghost first inhaled helium. And I'm like,
the
what
Lollipop Guild, Lollipop Guild.
What? I think a Smurf.
Heidi Gertrude Hull.
Oh.
Now you have to tell us your real middle name.
I am not.
I don't blame you. You don't have to share that if you don't want to.
It's a terrible one.
Well, you know.
You said Gertrude.
Myrtle.
That's as bad.
Mabel.
Hester.
What was that one? Esther.
Hester.
Oh, Hester.
Okay, so this person hears the name being called, and what's their next reaction?
Okay. They say, I was too scared to move. Then the light disappeared. About 30 seconds later, my mom started screaming in the next room because she saw a ghost.
Oh, so first the ghost shows up or harasses her, doesn't get a rise out of her, I think it moves on a poor old mom. Gee, that's a great kid right there.
Isn't that something? And then they put freaky stuff. Today, I don't even believe in ghosts, but I still have no idea what happened that night, and my mom still talks about that night.
Hold on, time out, and I hate to interrupt you here because this is the last time, I swear I'll interrupt you. How can you say you don't believe in ghosts when not only did you see the dancing light, but it frickin' talked to you? What more do you
I
need?
was going to say the same. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, what more do you need? Did he come out and do the Watusi for you, maybe? The Charleston, maybe.
I don't know. Eric can do Charleston.
That's an old dance. So that would date the ghost. I'll tell you that much.
That's pretty funny. But
Back to the 20s.
Yeah, that's wild. But I had a ghost call my name before, and it is horrifying. It is not a comfortable feeling. Fun.
Yeah, I bet not. All right. Anything else there, Heidi? Come on.
Well, I mean, I have tons, but I could stop there if you want. That's fine.
Let's do it, man. Did you guys hear though about the one?
Blow on through.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you happen to cover the one about the lady that is now engaged to a ghost?
Oh, nut.
Yeah, it's funny. It's real funny though.
It's probably really dirty. I think it's the same one I saw on some show talking about it.
Maybe.
Yes, she's been around.
Yeah. She makes her rounds in the ghost community there.
She gets around.
She does get around. She's what they would call a ghost opener. I was going to say a bad word.
Ew. She's, but I do have to share with those people that didn't catch that Apple News story on my books. That was kind of cool.
Well, share, please.
Well, it was 2 weeks ago that Apple News, unbeknownst to me, did a story on my book, The Secret War.
Oh, very cool.
And on the Hat Man. I was talking about shadow people in general.
Oh.
And I had no clue. People were starting to send me links, and I'm like, what is going on? And I'm like, it was called, What Are Shadow People? ? These supernatural entities are scarier than any horror movie. And they're just giving me credit for having named them and what they are. And it was a pretty cool honor. I was like, oh,
that's
I'm like,
a
you would
huge
think
honor.
Huge
honor. Yeah.
But they didn't try to talk to you about it, huh?
No, they were, but it looks like they read my book, The Secret War, and The Hat Man, and, just The Secret War book, but they mentioned The Hat Man, and they listened to me on Coast to Coast when I was on there. So that's what it seems to be. And wow, a lot of attention. People, not just friends. I've had people reaching out to me left and right about the topic, especially more now. I was like, wow, it's pretty cool.
Very, very cool. Very cool.
Came through Apple News, but was actually on Bustle, BUSTLE.
Oh, yeah, that's a big site.
That is. Yep, the hustle and the bustle. Yep.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. By Nina Khan. That was really neat. I was like, wow, you think I would know, but I didn't. So yeah, it was pretty cool. But you guys got time for one more paragraph?
We got lots of time. We got 15 more minutes. It's all yours.
All right, so here we go. This one says, I was driving home from work one evening. I usually take the freeway home, but I decided to take it easy and took side streets instead, passing the local cemetery. My grandmother had passed the year before, and it was her birthday that day. When I drove past her grave, I said, "Happy birthday, Lola," out loud. My car immediately filled up with tobacco smoke. She smoked tobacco multiple times a day. My windows were up, my AC was off, and there were no other cars around me. It freaked me out at first, but I knew it was just my grandma greeting me with her presence.
and secondhand smoke.
Yeah, it's like
thank you.
She should have come up with something a little more healthful to identify herself.
Other than stale Marlboro cigarette smell.
Thanks, Grandma.
Thanks, Grandma Lola. 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 Drank cola on the electric candlelight. No.
There are those who get that same kind of, how do you put it, smoker's voice? That, very,
the Phyllis Diller. We call it the Phyllis Diller.
There you go. Even the guys get it, and I don't think they realize
Hi there, how you doing? We're here to talk.
Oh, you're good at it. I wonder why.
Sure. Sure. Well, once upon a time, I was a heavy smoker. But yeah. No, I actually, do you guys remember, I forget his name. I knew him, though, that did all the things that goes, in a world that's gone horribly wrong. Remember those trailers? It was that guy.
Oh, yeah, of course.
He was, I knew him before he would cut one of those trailers. This is no lie. He would smoke a pack of Marlboro Reds and have about 4 or 5 shots of whiskey. And he would just show up to the microphone and cut it and just leave. Like mic drop leave kind of thing going on. It's like, damn. And then he quit smoking and his voice went to normal and no one wanted to hire him after that. And he's dead now, but, back then, he lost the magic in the voice.
Eric, you ever smoke?
No, never. Never. I have never inhaled tobacco. That is the truth.
Well, you performed at nightclubs, so you've smoked quite a bit.
Oh yeah, you're right. When I was DJing, especially, because those were still the smoking years. Since we've been in the band, that's been the last. Been back in a band after a long break. That's been about the last 6 years, and that during that time. No smoking in bars, at least in Ohio. So that's been fine. But yeah, my DJing days from the 80s through the 90s, yep, it was pretty bad. I'd have to really kind of pay attention to where I was in the room and try to be near a vent, and of course they were trying so hard to ventilate, but I mean, there was no hope of it, really. And it was so terrible on the equipment. I mean, do you have any idea what smoke does to electronic equipment?
I hear you. When I was
my God.
Yeah, my young days of radio, I did a radio with this guy named Dennis, and he was a smoking chimney. Like the kind of guy that light one right after the other cigarette. You've seen that before, right? Where they just light it right up the neck.
Oh, yeah. Chain smoker.
And and back in those days, we didn't have segregated studios. So we were like sitting almost shoulder to shoulder broadcasting. And here he is smoking away. And there's a cloud in the studio so thick, I could barely see. I'd have to look up because... we had a monitor that tell us our next prompt for what song or what we're going to do next. This is during a morning show, and that had everything, what we're going to do next. That's because the program director would pre-engineer everything. Okay, this is your next segment. I couldn't even barely read on the monitor what was coming up next, let alone do a live read. To read off that monitor. Hey, go on down to Bobby Lewis used Oldsmobile. Couldn't even do that. So it was that bad. It was a really bad. And Eric, you're right. It destroys equipment like no other.
Well, think about it. All the tars. And, just think about just from a fireplace. Think about a fireplace.
Yeah.
What goes up that chimney? Think about that.
Santa Claus.
But he was the voice.
He comes down. Well, he has got to go back up, too. You're right.
But this guy was the voice of a generation in that area. So there was just no way they were going to fire him or tell him what to do because he'd walk.
Wow. That's crazy.
My
goodness.
Yuppers.
Jeez, man. All right. Well, I've got some more here. All right, here we go. Some more short but sweet ones. Okay. This one says, at our fraternity house, there's a cat that won't die.
Well, it all depends on what you've done to that cat. I mean,
they have 9
They
lives.
do. You have to do it 9 times. You realize the 10th time you try is going to be the one that sticks.
This is crazy. I'm like, what? It's
Zachary Banks.
It's rarely seen, but I think she lives mostly in the crawl space and basement. Her name is Fluffy, and Fluffy won't die. Fluffy was brought to the house in the early 1980s for pest control and whatnot, wearing a leather collar with a tag, and still looks exactly the same. According to alumni that visit and see her, it's unexplainable.
Wait a minute. Wait. She's been around since the 1980s, this cat?
Yes.
Vampire cat.
Wow.
Yes. The cat didn't bring up offspring and put the collar on them. It's just a mean, creepy, silent 35-year-old cat.
with an attitude, just angry at the world. Why am I still here?
Yeah, let me take this thing off my neck.
God, you forgot about me. I'm down here waiting.
Who's feeding it? I mean,
5 years?
Yeah. My Lord.
That's a Methuselah cat.
That's what that is.
Oh, it's just mental. It's just mental. But okay. All right, here's the next one. Just a few months ago, I had to babysit my cousin's baby while my cousin went grocery shopping. I was just watching TV in the living room with the baby sleeping on the couch. I reached forward to grab the Coke that I was drinking when all of a sudden the baby started crying. I quickly go over to him so I could calm him and send him back to sleep. But when I see him, I'm shocked to see that he's still sound asleep.
Oh, dun, dun, dun. Yeah. All right.
Crying is still occurring. We were the only ones in the house, and the closest neighbor is half a block away.
Oh, do you remember when the 2-line horror stories were all the rage? That was one of them. The baby kept me awake last night again. Too bad I don't have any babies. Yeah, that call. Oh, yeah. Little kids scare the hell out of me. They really do.
My sister has something that cries from her basement wall. A baby. I told her it's a demon. Of course, it did her after a while.
You so nonchalantly say that. Yeah. By the way, my sister has a baby crying downstairs as we speak. I told her it's a demon, and she just doesn't believe me.
It's so crazy. It's like, in my line of work, I've talked about these spooky things a lot, and I've gone into detail on so many different times on different shows and stuff. But this is crazy. Okay, so like my sister, a Native American was showing up in her dreams while she was pregnant with my nephew, okay? And she different dreams kind of revealed that this Native American lost his son as an infant, and it was just really upsetting stuff. And here she moves into this house, and she's still having these dreams, and then she starts hearing this baby crying from the walls, and she's had my nephew, and she had a couple of run-ins, like physical run-ins, with these natives that she was dreaming about.
Wow.
And yeah, and she came to the conclusion there a couple of things. Okay, this is crazy what happened to her. She was sleeping, taking a nap in the middle of the day, and she had my nephew, and he was maybe 1 year old, and they're sleeping together, and she heard chanting, Native American singing.
Sure. Okay, all right. Eric, you're good at that, by the way.
She sees, yeah, that was pretty good. She wakes up and she finds a medicine man, not that she's ever seen before, shaking something over her and her baby boy. And so there was another native to the other side of her, and straight ahead of her was the guy from her dreams, the native who had lost his kid.
Maybe it's a blessing, though. Stop you right there. Maybe it's a blessing.
This is what I'm getting at. So the guy comes close, and she's like, she says, in Jesus' name, get out, you're not welcome. And he kind of steps back, and he comes close to her again and says, no, I can be here because there's a native presence here. She said, and they continued.
They argued for 10 minutes.
Yeah, they continued singing. She said, Heidi, I'm so scared I think I passed out. Now, the conclusion that I told her, I said, I think what's in your basement, these natives were trying to protect him, the boy, my nephew.
Sure.
And because she came one time into his room, and there was she thought that she went to just go check on her son and see if he was okay, and he was standing up in his crib, and she's like, what are you doing standing up? Go to bed. And he turns around and looks at her, and it was an old native woman that was standing there. It wasn't him.
Oh, that's freaky.
Tell me about it.
I mean, now that's a native woman, just the fact that it's a woman standing there, not your baby. Come on. Your sister, did she go crazy, hit the roof, and leave? Like, oh, no, we're moving. Okay, this is it. We're leaving.
we grew up in a haunted house, remember? But
Yeah.
she's
So that was like another day at the office for her.
yeah. Well, I told her, I said, what's in your basement sounds like a demon, and these natives don't seem like they're related. I think they're trying to protect you from what's in the basement. And I said, you know what? If that's a demon, just for protection's sake, go around your house and bless it. And I told her how to do it. Well, she wouldn't. And I said, if you don't do it, it's going to threaten to kill you or something. So she tells me, I'm not kidding you. She said, Heidi, I was laying on the bed, and I mean, this took her a couple years. The kid's like 2 or 3 years old, and she's like, I'm laying on my bed, and I'm just like, I'm not sleeping. I close my eyes and I'm just relaxing. She said, and I felt this hot breath come into my ear and said, I'm going to kill you.
Well, that's always nice to have happen.
In a cheery.
Yeah. Hey, guess what I'm doing today? What? I'm killing you.
Yeah. She said, how do I do this blessing again? I said, yeah, I told you it was going to get to that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
I would so be moving. I would be out of there so fast. I don't know what I would do. It's kind of like in that movie, Amityville Horror. Get out. I would be like, okay, see you later. I don't want this house.
Peace out. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
she did bless it. Things calmed down, and it was pretty good up until maybe a year ago. She started hearing the crying again on the wall.
Oh, gee, great. Here we go again.
Yeah, but it's been like 5-6 years, and it was quiet. So I don't know what the dealio is. I'm like, great, demon stuck in the wall again, just like a cat,
Just like a cat. Cats and demons.
We talked
the same.
We talked to the owners of the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magic last Thursday,
And Emporium.
and that's and Emporium, and that's based right here in Cleveland. And they have a demon in a box.
They do.
And they have the name. They have the name of the demon. They got all this information. They know how it got in the box. Raymond Buckland himself doomed the demon, confined the demon to this box.
And
there it is at the museum.
Only
So
problem.
you can't say Beetlejuice 3 times.
No,
Leroy.
the only problem I had with that demon in the box story wasn't the demon in the box. It was I kept on thinking that Justin Timberlake skit from Saturday Night Live that whole time.
Yes, exactly. And when you're there in the museum rather than on the air, we discussed that in some depth.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Wow, in the box. I would hate for there to be water damage on it.
Yeah, right. Or someone accidentally drop it and shatter it, and then the demon's running all over the place. Oh, did anybody happen to catch Halloween night when they opened up the infamous Dybbuk box on Ghost Adventures? I've not caught it yet on demand or anything. Eric, did you catch that, or were you still
we were
watching
at
Halloween? Okay. I'm gonna have to go back and see if they actually did that thing. If they actually opened up the Dybbuk box.
Wow. Oh, that does sound cool.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to own that box, but it would be kind of fun to watch someone open it and then be attacked. Yeah.
Like a Bugs Bunny skit.
Exactly.
Off.
Yes.
Where'd your face go?
Duh, Crusher. There you go.
Yeah. Or a note saying, "Ha ha, you're dumb enough to believe there's a demon in this box. Joke's on you," little note.
What was that movie, The Gift?
Oh yeah, it had Jeffrey Dean Morgan in it. Yeah.
That's good.
That was a good film. That was a good
I
flick.
think that's what that's about, right?
Yeah,
Based on the
yeah.
It's based on the Dybbuk box. It took a lot of liberties, but
It did. I suppose we should really announce who our guest is tonight, huh, Eric? Really quickly before we go to the break. That
Absolutely.
people kind of know who we're going to
Very.
be talking to at the top of the next hour.
very excited. We're speaking with Dr. Emily Zarka, and she's the writer and host and the creator of a new PBS digital series, which is fascinating. There's 4, I think it's going to be a 6-episode season, the first season, and 4 of them are up, and they are fascinating. They're all about 7-8 minutes long. It's called Monstrum, and they've already covered dragons, Frankenstein, vampires, and the Headless Horseman. And she put this whole thing together, and she will be our guest. She's a lifelong horror fanatic. Can't wait to talk to her. It's going to be great.
So that will be top of next hour. We're going to run a break. we come back, your America's Most Haunted Headlines. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to report a bear sighting.
Location.
My backyard.
Oh, your backyard. Try telling a bear that.
I did, and this bear talked back.
Talking bear, that's rich.
No, wait, it was Smokey Bear.
Smokey. Why didn't you say so?
I did say so.
Continue.
I was burning yard waste.
No, boy.
He told me to burn legally and responsibly, and to remember that if it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave.
And as always, he's right. You know, 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans. That means 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented.
Yeah, I know that now.
Thanks to me.
Actually, thanks to Smokey.
As usual, the talking bear gets all the credit. Get your Smokey on. Always burn responsibly and contact your local fire department for open burning regulations. Because 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented. Brought to you by Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at smokeybear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
I got a rather serious problem over here.
All right, what are we looking at?
Cranky mother-in-law asleep on the couch in the man cave.
Dear God.
It gets worse.
That's impossible.
She's passed out on the remote.
I stand corrected.
What do I do?
Okay, I want you to grab a Torrin Big Red hydraulic bottle jack.
Okay.
Now you wedge that bad boy in under your mother-in-law and crank her up skyward.
It's working. And got the remote.
Great. Now grab that Torrin Big Red 2-ton folding shop crane and put that woman on wheels.
And away we go.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
And welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, right along with me,
Eric Olson. And?
Heidi Hollis!
What's up? My gosh.
Sorry about that.
Talk about. Now I know where I can play some mid-roll later on. Right there in that pause.
How soon they forget.
How soon? It's the amnesia.
I was waiting for the and.
Well, it's the amnesia. Already kicked in. It's the chocolate
You know what it was?
amnesia.
I'm telling you what it was. It was a pregnant pause.
That's exactly what it was.
Oh, of course.
Just don't say pregnant to me anymore. I've heard that phrase too many times in my life. But anyhow.
As long as it's the next generation.
Well, that's true. That's
I'm okay
true.
with
Oh,
it.
boy. Point your browsers, if you're on your computer, to twitter.com and search out America's Most Haunted. That is, of course, our Twitter feed. There is currently 461,000 followers. Hey, you should join and be one of them. It'd be super cool if you did. But if you're one of those strange people for some reason that don't want to tweet, you can still follow us over here at the America's Most Haunted Twitter feed. Always brought to you by America's Most Haunted, and that is Eric and I's website, of course, is America's-Most-Haunted. That's your one-stop shop for all cool things paranormal and amazemo. Each and every article is written by, well, Mr. Eric Olson himself. So give those a read. You're going to love them. Again, it's America's-Most-Haunted.com, and over at Twitter, America's Most Haunted. Boom.
All right.
I thought you said point your brassieres too.
What?
What?
Browsers, lady. Browsers.
Point your brassiere.
Point those suckers that way.
My brain just went there. I'm sorry. Continue. I'm sorry. I'll stop.
My brain is often there, but yes, not that moment.
I hope they're unloaded. All right. Okay. So, I love this image. It's just a screenshot from Hocus Pocus. It's the moment when I think it's probably the last one, Winifred, when she First, she turns into a rock, then she just explodes in green sparkles. So it's that explosion
Kaboom! Yes.
of green sparkles. And like that, Halloween has come and gone.
I know. It's too bad it's gone already.
Yeah.
Gosh darn it.
We've been talking about this. There's that long, slow. It's a long tail buildup, and it starts picking up steam a little bit in July. Starts picking up a lot more steam in August, and it starts to work itself into a frenzy in September, and it's full on boiling through October, and then it's gone.
I'll tip my hat, man, and mourn.
Well, it is gone. But guess what? We have Thanksgiving next and a big old turkey. And I can't wait for that. Turkey and football. And then Christmas. Christmas will be here. And then the New Year. Come on, man. A lot of great stuff heading our way.
Oh, of course. But the annual ceremony that we all love so well because it fits right into our mindset and our worldviews, it has gone. So things taper off quite a bit. One of these years, I'm going to get to do more. I'm in that in-between time where I'm so busy and I don't have young enough kids where I get to do the young kid trick-or-treating stuff, yet I still do have kids. And so I can't do things that would require me to not have kids. So, I'm in between. Anyway, as Joel was saying, please do go on your device, whatever that may be, to actually twitter.com/AMHaunted. So you too can see these images, such as the explosion of green. I love this next story, and I really encourage you to click through and read it. It is so fun. It is so cool. There's a family in Tennessee, and every single night from October 1st through November 1st, so through tonight, they put different, a lot of them really funny, it's always kind of spooky, but mostly it's just hilarious, scenarios, family scenarios, using a bunch of skeletons in their yard. So the family's washing the dog, they're riding around in a hearse. There's if you click
family functions is what you're watching going on.
It's family functions. It is so fun. So anyway, it's a story in the Leaf Chronicle, which is the local paper there in Tennessee, and it's related somehow to USA Today. And so Tennessee family has an entire village of skeletons that rearrange every night in October, perform all kinds of activities. So anyway, a lot of effort. None of it's, gross or gory or anything. It's clever. It's spooky. It is super cool. You gotta check this out. And they plan it out. They storyboard every new scenario. Oh. They start in August, so they know what they're going to do through every night in October. So it's a big deal, and they get a lot of attention for it as well. They should check that out.
You know what that does? That tickles my funny bone.
All right, what are the funnier but also disturbing and
show.
It's a horror movie. What We Do in the Shadows, but it's hilarious too.
It's so funny.
From the New Zealanders, and so this new show coming to FX. I don't think anyone from the movie, any of the cast. The same people are writing it and overseeing it, but it's an all-new cast. So there'll be a TV series on FX coming spring of 2019. What We Do in the Shadows. I just love that movie. It's really good.
It is
both
really good.
Touching and hilarious and scary.
Oh, it's a great show. If you haven't seen it, check it out. I do believe it's streaming right now, free on Prime.
Looks good.
And you can check that out. I liked it a lot. I liked it when they encounter the werewolves.
Yeah.
I found that the funniest part.
It's funny, it's touching, because it really does kind of take a semi-serious look at, all right, so what really would happen to people, who happen to have become vampires, who have these very long, extended lives. There's certain things they have to do, but it's looking at their emotional state, and it's really quite fascinating. All right, moving along. As we've been saying, the three of us, my wife, youngest son, 14-year-old, and I went to see a Halloween movie.
Give us the lowdown, man. Give us the lowdown.
So if you haven't seen it yet, and millions and millions and millions have, but if you have not yet, it's 40 years later. It ignores every Halloween film other than the very first one. So it's a sequel to the very first film, 40 years later. And, of course, it has Jamie Lee Curtis. She's still Laurie Strode. She's now, about 60. And so is Michael Myers, slightly older. I think we figure he's
71 years young he is.
Ooh.
No, I think he has to be 61 because he was 21.
Well, the actor is 71 years young.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You were right. We looked that up. Yep. But Michael Myers himself would be 61. He's a mighty spry 61, by the way.
I was gonna say, I'd be more.
I'm telling you, he is he remains indestructible. So basically, he's getting transferred from one mental institution to another. The old transfer trick.
Eric, I gotta ask you, at 61 years old, was there any point in the movie where he looked at the camera and said, "Get off my lawn"?
No, he never said anything.
Oh, okay.
He never looked at the camera once to do anything.
Oh,
yeah,
he didn't break the fourth wall, is what you're saying.
No, he did not.
Okay.
You get a lot of his point of view. They do a lot of that. There's a lot of camera techniques from the first one. So in many ways, it's an homage to the very first Halloween.
But did you like it?
I liked it, but my wife and son liked it better than I did. I only liked it. I didn't love it. Okay. And what I think is, it's very interesting. It's a psychological study of poor Laurie Strode. For 40 years, she's basically been preparing for the reunion. So he escapes from the bus, right, when they're transferring him, goes on a killing spree, obviously, and ends up at her house, Laurie's house, and ultimately her daughter and granddaughter end up there too. So it's these 3 generations of Strode women against Michael Myers. And, I obviously won't tell you what happens, but it is very interesting. It's fascinating. It's kind of grim, It doesn't have some of the offhand humor that the first one had, which was funny at odd times while still being completely terrifying. So my assessment is this. I think it's the third best in the series. I think it comes after the original 1 and 2.
Really?
It's very good. I liked it. I would see it again. It's interesting. It's well made. It's very well acted. It's all those things.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's great. I just think it's very good to good. And I do think it comes in about, my approximation is third in the series. So there you go.
Something you said to Joel, though, it's worth to see on the big screen.
Yes, I would recommend just to kind of maybe take advantage of or get the most out of some of these visuals. There's the classic one super long take with no cuts, which is also kind of mimicking Carpenter in the original.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of visuals, I think, that are better seen on the big screen. And even just the theatrical experience, even though it was a Wednesday night and it was Halloween, we had no idea what to expect. How crowded would it be? And I figured, well, it's a Wednesday night and, and sure, a lot of people are going to go just because it's Halloween and it's Halloween. I would say it was about half full. So it was about what I expected. About what I expected.
Was
7 o'clock. On a Wednesday night.
Okay, 2 questions. How many stars would you give it if you had to give it a star?
Out of 5?
Yeah.
I'd give it a 3.75.
Okay, it's almost 4 stars. That's not bad. And is it better than the Rob Zombie rendition type films?
I honestly, I couldn't even watch either of those. I saw about a half hour of one and about 15 minutes of the other, and I was driven away shrieking.
Good.
So, yes,
it's
in my
better.
estimation,
Good.
much better.
Another question, would Freddy Krueger kick his butt?
Man, I don't know, because, he's...
Wasn't it Jason that was facing off with him at one point?
Well, yeah, they have comic books that have them all.
The movie. Yeah, the movie, too.
He is not quite as overtly supernatural.
Right.
In some of the other ones, but he still appears to be indestructible. Because if I tell you what happens at the very, 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 very end, you'll know that there could be yet another one coming.
There is. If it did really well at the box office, they're going to keep pumping those things out.
Yep.
You know how that. We all know how Hollywood works, and
It's done extremely well.
By the way, I did read. I think it was in Bloody Disgusting that Robert Englund is going to do reprise ready. He said he's got one more left in him.
Yeah, you know what did it was he appeared on the Halloween episode, which aired this week, of course, of the Goldbergs.
Yes, I heard. I want to see it.
Okay.
And it's a cameo. It's pretty short. It's not like he's on the whole episode. But I think having the makeup back on and doing the voice and interacting, I'm guessing that told him, man, I don't have anything else going on. Why not?
I would love one more with him in it. Just one more.
Yes.
And then they can do whatever they want after that because no one else can do what he does.
I'll never forget when I saw the title of the movie Freddy Got Fingered. I thought it was Freddy Krueger. I'm like, oh, dang it. It isn't.
Wow.
It's like, what a title. Freddy Got Fingered? Huh?
Excuse me. I was sipping.
That's not a cult film.
Excuse me.
No.
Yeah. That sounds awfully, not for this show. Okay.
What'd they do with his fingers?
I'll bet they were using... Freddy got fingered. I bet they're using the criminal usage of the word fingered.
Pointed out of something.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, moving along. I think this one is so cool. It's the first time I've heard of anything like this at all. So, Universal Orlando, which, of course, does its... Halloween Horror Nights all through, well, now it starts, mid-September? And goes through, I'm sure, this weekend. I'm guessing. I wouldn't think they'd shut down in the middle of the week just because that's when Halloween is. Anyway, they're going to reopen after they've shut down all the other. Now they're just back to being regular old Universal Orlando. They're going to reopen the Stranger Things haunted attraction. That's one of the haunted houses on November 6th because that is Stranger Things Day. And in the show itself, that was the anniversary of when Will Byers disappeared.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I was just asked that question today. When are we going to get another installment? And if memory serves it correctly, it won't be until 2019. Am I correct, Eric? Just to fill in the listeners that have been asking.
I think it's not only 2019. I think it's like summer of 2019.
So you got a little while left to wait.
It's almost. I think it'll end up being almost 2 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
Lord,
yeah,
another one I'm looking forward to. I have to admit, I love Lost in Space, the Netflix one.
I haven't watched it yet, but I do hear a lot of good things about it.
Amazing! It was really good. And
we saw the first episode and thought, that kind of has promise, and then we just didn't get back to it. But you're saying we should, huh?
Oh, man, I was really impressed with it. I was like, a whole other world. It really is. So I like where they went with it. And they, of course, reinvented each character and the scenario. And it's just amazing. The special effects, I loved it.
I'll have to check that out when I got a little extra time.
Yeah, I even started rewatching it. It was so endearing and engaging. I dug.
Well, that's saying something if you can go back and watch. I mean, the only other series that I found myself going back to watch would be like House MD once in a while when that's on, because I always thought his one-liners were kind of funny to listen to. But not a whole lot of shows do I go back to.
Battlestar Galactica, the newer one, I do that sometimes.
Yeah. There's some of them are worth doing it, but that's very cool. I'll have to check that out.
Well, Joel, you know what show I've gone back and watched?
Supernatural.
Naturally.
He has a bromance.
In fact, it's on right now.
Eric,
are you serious? I thought you were kidding.
Eric has had a bromance with Supernatural as long as I've known him, all these years, right?
Everything I know about the paranormal I learned from watching Supernatural.
Really, that could be the truth, which I don't believe. I think he's got a little more knowledge of that. But anyhow, for years and years and years on this show, he would say, have you ever watched Supernatural? No, Eric, I've never watched Supernatural. Have you ever watched Supernatural? Finally, I broke down like 6 months ago. And he's like, have you ever watched I have, Eric. I have. Oh, I thought there was going to be a parade in the streets of Cleveland there for a minute. I finally checked out Supernatural, and my reaction was, it was all right.
I know hardcore fans of that. I used to watch it up until the last 3 years. It's been going on for 20 years, right? Something like that.
14th season.
It is a good show, though. I do have to tell you, it is a good show.
Yeah.
I wish I would have gotten on a bandwagon a lot earlier, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to catch up. I mean, 14 years. And if you go back, if you watch it now, and if you are kind of new to it relatively recently, and then you go back to the beginning, it's like, oh my God, they're like children. They were so young. And plus, it was pretty silly at the beginning. It was pretty hokey. That's a show that's just gotten better and better and better over time. It really has.
Yeah, it seems to. I started with season 1, and I made it through season 2 or 3.
I mean, they were in their early 20s when it started.
Now, soap opera shows, right?
I mean, Dean's almost 40, So, I mean, it's a big, big difference. Anyway, next tweet. This one's really about the image, and this is just... Oh, fantastic image. So it's a black and white photo. Basically, you're seeing the sky. It's full of stars. It's the Milky Way. And then there's a lone figure silhouetted against the cosmos. And he is, of course, alone in the cosmos.
Oh, just alone. Alone with your thoughts in the cosmos.
The next one, again, you gotta see it. I am an aficionado of jack-o'-lanterns and carved pumpkins, carved gourds of any kind. I'm a total aficionado.
You're just a lover. You're just a lover of anything with holes in it that happens to be a pumpkin.
That's cool.
Exactly. Yes, well put. So this image is my favorite that I've seen this year. It is elaborate. It is creepy. And have you guys noticed there's a new trend. It's pretty new. I'm sure I saw it last year. It's been around a few years. But this year, super picking up steam. They're now doing a lot of the carving, when it's a quote-unquote pumpkin sculpture, basically. And they're turning it on its side. So that the bottom of it, where it connects to the, I guess, no, it's not the stem. It's the bottom of it, where it has the little belly button. The butt, they're using that as a nose, for example. So you just get a different shape and a different texture when you turn it on its side. See, look, see how different it is? So this face that we're seeing here, and again, I encourage you, go to twitter.com/amhaunted.
It looks like a sphincter.
It looks like an angry butthole.
There you go.
Monster with eyes. And what is in his mouth? I don't want to. It looks like some sort of attack of Cheese Whiz.
It is that. That's actually carved pumpkin, isn't it, Eric?
It is. It's amazing.
I thought that was gonna be like a puppet or something. That's a really carved. Wow.
Like after eating chili cheese and
that is something else.
Swallow reflex.
Yeah, look at that.
Pretty cool.
That is super cool.
That is my number one pumpkin of the 2018 season. There it is. So you guys got to go check it out on Twitter. All right, so here's one of these cases of multi-layers, very meta. So did you know that when Washington Irving wrote
Sleepy Hollow.
That's not the name of it. It's the Ichabod Crane.
Yeah.
I can't believe
Washington Irving invented Sleepy Hollow is what he did in his book.
Exactly. He created it. It didn't exist. Now, it was based on a town, based on a real town, and it was Tarrytown was the name, and it's on the Hudson River. Yeah, it's the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I'm sorry. You guys were much more right than I was. Yes, that's the name of the story. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. We all know about it, and in fact, we'll be talking about it in the second hour because that's one of the segments covered on Monstrum. Anyway, he invented the name Sleepy Hollow. It did not exist. It was closely or fairly based on the peaceful hamlet of Tarrytown. But interestingly enough, the town decided that it was worth their while, kind of like Salem, kind of throwing it with the witches and Halloween, right? Have you guys been to Salem? Because, man, it is witch. Halloween central.
Yeah, I went there years ago for an event I was speaking at, and it was funny because even the police cars have the witches on the side of them.
Oh my gosh!
It's nuts. I mean, they don't even
bad.
pretend. You know, it is really hokey. Well, it's not. It is hokey, but it transcends the hokiness. They are so all in. Anyway, the point is, this town, North Tarrytown, was the actual town that did this. In 1996, they actually renamed themselves Sleepy Hollow. So since 1996, there is a real Sleepy Hollow. And they've gone all in on the Headless Horseman and the Legend of Sleepy Hollow as well. And of course, remember, we had a TV series.
We did.
There have been several movies based on it. And so now there is a real town. It's kind of like the town in Oregon that was used to film the Halloween Town TV movies, Disney movies, and now they're all in. I don't think they changed their name, though. They have not changed their name to Halloween Town, but they go just all out and recreate, scenes from the film and everything else, films all through October. And it's quite the tourist destination, is, the Halloween town.
Yeah.
I triple dog dare somebody to name their village Smurf Village, then. I'll go.
That'd be so cool.
Wouldn't it? I'd be there.
When I was in Salem, I brought that up about the witches and everything, and one of the town leaders, someone on city council looks at me and says, can't beat them, join them.
That's exactly right. I mean, it really is. And, it becomes a commercial... becomes a fundraising, a driving revenues. All right, without reading, okay, don't read. Look at that next image. What do you see?
Stonehenge, come on, man.
Exactly, except it's Foamhenge.
Oh.
It is a exact scale replica. Same size. It is meticulously recreated. And this is in the U.S., made out of foam.
Where is this?
Yeah, where's that located?
Let's go look. Virginia.
Man, I go see
Road
it.
trip.
Yeah, I'd definitely go see that. That'd be
Look
cool
at that,
to see.
Right?
That would
Northern
be
Virginia.
super
It's
cool to see.
It's just like when they built Disney over there in Europe. Now people don't want to come here, so I'm going to stay here and go to our Stonehenge.
Exactly.
Foamhenge.
Exactly. Well, before you move on to the next one, Eric, really, really quickly, I'm going to throw this in there. We have our very own headline to tell everyone about. We have moved. We are now joining the LNM radio network, and you can hear this very show over there right after Heather Wade's show. So we will be appearing there, as soon as, I do believe tonight will be our first night that we will be on the LNM radio network. So check that network out. They're doing a lot of great things. Heidi, you have a couple shows over there. Yeah, we're over there. So check that out. Again, LNM radio network. You're going to like what you hear. A lot of good stuff coming out.
Cool.
Come out of that network.
Awesome.
So move on, Eric.
Us adding to our many, 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 many outlets.
Excellent. Excellent.
Is that your smoking voice?
That's my Mr. That's Smithers, not Smithers, but Mr. Burns. Excellent.
There you go.
All right, last picture, or last tweet before we go. I love this image. It's very creepy, very spooky. You really can see the Civil War uniform, and supposedly it's the real thing. It's not like a picture of an actual recreator or even an actual image from the war, because there was photography. It's faded, but supposedly it's the real deal, and it is very, very clear that is a Civil War era soldier, and it's on I believe that's from Gettysburg, on the field of death, and it's really an amazing image, don't you think?
That is really darn tootin' cool is what that is. If it's real, I should load that into some
If it's
software, and because I've been able to debunk them. Remember before, just by loading it in. So I'll have to do the same thing and see.
So the vast carnage of the Civil War appears to have left a vast number of ghosts. I mean, you hear about them all the time, of course, from Gettysburg, but any number of other Civil War battle sites has many, many sightings of soldiers who don't know the war is over.
Yeah.
Kind of sad, though, when you think about it, walking the death field alone, being a lone
bunch of
soldier.
kids got killed. I mean, those were kid soldiers.
That was really sad. Bloody, bloody time in American history.
400,000 Americans.
Jeez.
That was an enormous percentage of the population.
Yeah,
Think how much smaller the country was then.
We're just crunching on bones wherever we go.
We really are. We got to get out of here. We come back. We're going to be talking about some monsters, some great reads, all that cool stuff with PBS's own Dr. Emily Zarka. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
Unexpected reactions to smart financial decisions brought to you by feedthepig.org.
Well, I finally did it. My student loan is totally paid off. I can't believe it. I can't believe it either. I paid more than the minimum each month, and soon enough, it was gone.
So you're just giving up?
Giving up on what?
The life of luxury. Egyptian cotton, caviar Thursdays, designer everything.
What are you talking about?
Our plan. What happened to winning the lottery and mastering the art of the perfect mimosa? Hosting galas, wearing enough jewelry to require a bodyguard, vacationing in the French Riviera, and then buying it.
I just thought maybe it was time to prepare for my future. You know, set some financial goals, make some smart investments, open a 401k.
Financial goals? Investments? A 401k? You are horrifying right now. Listen, if winning the lottery were easy, everyone would do it.
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of CPAs and the Ad Council.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
So me and the boys head out to tailgate today and find some other fans in our spot.
Well, it happens.
Cheering for the wrong team.
Oh, this is war.
Even worse, they've got this couch set up and everything.
A couch?
Yeah, it's sectional.
All right, first thing, don't ever use the word sectional again.
Done.
Second, I want you to grab a 4,700-pound tow chain with J-hook and grab hammer. Throw that on the back of your truck.
Got it.
Now you're going to Hail Mary the J-hook over the end of that couch. Time to find a better spot for your new friends.
That should do it.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. Step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the Wacky Waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the Wacky Waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
Green light. Hey, girl. School zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on 2 things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstopwrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
And welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, right along with me,
Eric Olson.
And what are we doing? Man, I don't want to say what are we doing tonight. I know exactly what we're doing tonight. We're talking about monsters, man. And I got to be honest, my favorite of all time, and I know we're going to talk about this, is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I loved that thing and still do, especially as a kid. I really loved it. I remember I was hooked as soon as I saw the Walt Disney rendition of it. And tonight,
Me too.
yeah, we're lucky enough to really have a really authority on where it came from, though. See, that's what I learned from the video. But I will step aside. I will let you tell everyone all that kind of good stuff, Eric.
All right. Well, the show is called Monstrum. Monstrum, hosted by Dr. Emily Zarka, is the latest digital show launched by PBS Digital Studios. Monstrum is part of PBS's larger summer and fall series, The Great American Read, that showcases America's favorite novels. The 6-episode series, which airs on the network's Facebook page, explores monsters, myths, and legends from a literary perspective. Each episode focuses on a particular monster, delving into the history and theories behind its origin and looking at its meaning in a cultural context and throughout time. The first episode of Monstrum, What Dragons Say About Us, addresses the mythological origins of iconic dragons from Game of Thrones and The Hobbit and on, explains why dragons have been part of human culture for thousands of years. Episode 2 looks at Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, celebrating its 200th year of publication, a revolutionary text that pioneered the sci-fi genre. On the surface, it's a novel about a scary monster, but the sympathetic description of a soulful creature makes us rethink the label. Who indeed is the monster? Stories of blood-sucking monsters have been around for centuries, but the one who has outlived them all is Dracula. Revisit the Count and other vampires he inspired in Episode 3. Episode 4 talks about the history behind the Headless Horseman and the Irish folklore of the Headless Dullahan. Oh, my goodness. And who is this woman? Dr. Emily Zarka. She earned her doctorate in literature from Arizona State University, where she currently serves as a faculty member with expertise in the Gothic genre, horror, and monsters in literature and film. Zarka's research looks at how human history can be read as monster history. With a pathologist father and a horror fanatic mother, oh my, I'm afraid. Zarka likes to say that she was born for the job. Zarka is the writer and host of the show Monstrum for, as we've said, PBS Digital Studios and The Great American Read. And the show looks at the complex histories and motivations behind some of the world's most famous monsters. She has written for Slate. Her most recent publication, an examination of race, violence, and sexuality in the Walking Dead comic series, appears as, this is the name of her chapter, The Sexualized Heroics of Rick and Michonne, in the book collection Race, Gender, and Sexuality in The Walking Dead. Among the Doctor's amazing monstrous academic conference, I loved reading these, conference presentations are The Female Vampire as Resistance, Confrontation of Patriarchal Control in Wake, Not the Dead. Another one, Mary Shelley's Displaced Reanimates, exploring the disruptive bodies and minds of the undead. Yet another, A.B. Granville's Mummy Autopsies and British Bodily Insecurity. London's The Mummy as investigation into the rights of the post-human. And last but certainly not least, Wedded to the Tomb, Undead and Sexuality in Short Romantic Works. That's amazing stuff. Welcome to the program, Dr. Emily Zarka.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you, Dr. Zarka, for coming on the show. And I got to say, I'm really digging what you're putting out there.
Thank you.
I found all of the episodes of Monstrum not only educational, but really entertaining, and it has a great hook to it. Come on, monsters. And then, of course, the great books to go right along with them. It makes everybody want to read. I mean, really, it does. It makes me want to go revisit all these books.
Good. I mean, that's one of the goals. But hopefully in the future, we'd like to look at some of the more oral tradition monsters as well. But that's what we aim to do at PBS Digital Studios. Be educational, but be informative. And who doesn't love a monster?
I think everybody loves a monster, though. I mean, I always felt so bad for Frankenstein's monster.
Yes. Yeah. I came to Frankenstein when I was actually in college and undergraduate, and I immediately identified with the creature because it was so different from I feel like, portrayals that at least I had seen in film. And he's such a soulful, beautiful, being who's just treated terribly by the world.
Yeah, like it's like a newborn baby having to go into a cold, cruel world and dealing with all that. But, a lot of stuff that maybe people don't know is about Mary Shelley, the writer. Mm-hmm. How did that all come about? I mean, because you wouldn't think that a woman of that period of time would be writing something like that, but lo and behold,
that age,
exactly, just right? Amazing.
Yes. Very few people realize that Mary Shelley was a teenager when she wrote Frankenstein, which is one of the most enduring texts of all time. But I think Shelley had just such a complicated and sad history, but I think she speaks to not just all female authors, but all authors in general. But I personally believe that none of these stories, come out of the void somewhere, that there's definitely life inspiration and political inspiration. And growing up in the culture that she was, I think she just felt the need to express her sorrow and even her country's sorrow from some of the wars they had seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely an artifact of her times, but it also speaks to even today because it really serves as a cautionary tale.
Yeah, above everything, I think that all monster stories are either cautionary tales or educational tales. And I think Frankenstein really encompasses both of those. And yeah, I mean, it's all about what even constitutes life. And then how do we as humans define life? And then what happens when we do have control over life? Do we have control over life? And those are obviously still themes that relate today, especially with the way technology and robotics and all that stuff's moving.
Well, we're also knocking on the door of cloning.
Yes. Yeah, I find cloning fascinating.
What's more Frankenstein-like almost than cloning, for crying out loud?
Yeah, anytime you're manipulating genetics at that level is absolutely insane to me, and I think deserves to have questions raised alongside it.
A lot of them. And believe me, you do not want to clone another one of me. That would be a mistake, science. Don't do that.
I find it fascinating that here we are in the 200th. I mean, in some ways that seems so long, anniversary of the book. So, of course, there have been all kinds of stories and lots of write-ups all year. But for those maybe who've only read them in bits and pieces or just skipped over them, I think it'd be great to hear from an expert. Maybe just give us some of those real clear examples from the time and influences that led to, like, the electricity experiments, the fact that she spent the time in the summer without a summer or the year without a summer, et cetera, some of which you mentioned in the series. But maybe paint the picture for us and a little bit of her, just horrifyingly tragic life. She was a girl, that poor girl.
Yeah, and I mean, so I think Frankenstein as a text is just a perfect storm, and I use storm intentionally, as you'll see in a minute, in so many ways, because Mary Shelley, her mother died after childbirth, giving birth to her, and actually her father was very upset over the whole situation and would actually take young Mary to go visit her mother's grave on a regular basis. And so Mary Shelley would literally go and write and sit at her mother's grave throughout her lifetime. So she's literally surrounded by death, just constantly. And then in addition to losing many pregnancies of her own, and then ultimately her husband, who was originally her lover, and the reason they could only actually get married is because Percy Shelley's first wife committed suicide while she was pregnant, which is, of course, horrifying in so many ways. But I think the way I perceive Mary Shelley, that I think that had some kind of emotional impact on her. So we have all of Mary Shelley's personal stuff going on. But then also, before she wrote Frankenstein, the French Revolution had just happened. So we have the literal uprising of bodies of, the upset French gentry, not the French gentry, the peasants who didn't think the monarchy was doing the right job. So Britain was removed from that situation, but they saw the intense violence that came from that. And I think there was a fear of that happening in their own country. And then, of course, there was the American Revolution that they had just gone through. So they had lost a war. So death, and again, the uprising of bodies was on their mind. And then, yes, the explosion of a volcano called Mount Tambora happened in 1816, and literally the environmental effects of that, from the ash cloud and other elements was so great that it changed the temperature of large parts of the world. And so, yeah, it was called The Year Without a Summer because it was stormy and raining and cold all the time. So what happened is Mary Shelley and the people she was with, including her lover, Percy Shelley, and some other noted names of the period, they were holed up in Villa Diodati. And it was a stormy night, and they were bored. And Lord Byron, kind of being Lord Byron, dared them. They'd been reading spooky stories, but he dared everyone present to come up with their own horror story. And Mary Shelley actually didn't really know where to go with it at first. In what she's written about her process, that she was kind of stuck, but she had a nightmare. And it was that nightmare that allowed her to start conceptualizing Frankenstein. But then, of course, you have the science element. So in addition to galvanism, which was an actual science they believed during this time period, which was literally applying electrical current to dead tissue. And that was everything not only from frogs and other parts of animals, but they would actually, and this was done both publicly and privately, basically electrocute the bodies of executed criminals to see if they could become reanimated. And knowing what we know now about electricity, of course, muscle twitches and all that stuff was happening. But at the time, they thought that maybe that meant you could restore life to a body. So all of these things are going on with Mary Shelley, and also the idea of the female reproductive system, and autopsies were everywhere. So I think she literally just happened to be born in a time and raised in a time and had personal life experiences that allowed her to put together this beautiful text that, is still relevant 200 years later, which is incredible.
It is.
Man, you know stuff.
I was going to say that you really give us the run. Now, she changed it, though, in a re-edit in the 1830s, right? Where it became darker.
Yeah. So I say that because I just really appreciate the original text so much. I think the 1831 text, and scholars will, chat your ear off like I'm doing right now about it. But I think that she had lost very, very many children at that point, and her own husband. And I think that combined with some of the critical response to Frankenstein, she was just in a different headspace. So when she had the opportunity to change it, it becomes Frankenstein's choice to abandon the creature is more fate than a choice. It's kind of like an inevitability rather than something he consciously does in the first text.
It was almost a reflection of her own life in some aspects, a loss and abandonment and everything that was going on.
Yeah, that's been argued. And I mean, you can't ignore the fact that there isn't a mother. Like, the Frankenstein's creature does not have a maternal figure. And Mary Shelley also, she didn't have a mother. So yeah, I think there's definitely some similarities between the creature's life and her own life.
Well, backing up just a little bit, I got to ask you this. How did you get PBS to go for a show like Monstrum, though? I mean, because I remember it being like NewsHour and Nova and stuff like that growing up. How did something this cool come out of PBS, for crying out loud, Doctor? How did you get that to happen?
Well, like I said, I've been positioning myself as a monster expert for some time, and every single person I talk to about my research, my work, is always like, oh, well, what about this monster? Or, oh, I saw this scary movie. So monsters are very relatable, but essentially they happened to be looking for more humanities content, so moving away a little bit from the science and math stuff. And I pitched PBS Digital Studios, and they thought it was a great idea. I think, honestly, I got really lucky. But again, I think monsters have existed since human written history, and definitely oral history, and even before that. So monsters have always been part of our lives, and every single society has monsters that are very place and time specific in some ways. And I think people like to hear the reasons behind why we fear the things we do, which is what I'm trying to do.
It takes me back to there was a line in the recent rendition of Dracula where he's in the cave with what turned him into Dracula. And he says a wonderful line, sometimes the world needs a monster. And that's true sometimes. You need that monster. You need that, especially in literary work, of course. You need that monster. And I mean, it makes it relatable.
That was a very sympathetic Dracula in that movie.
It was. It was a nice guy. I'd hang out with him.
See, and I don't think vampires should be nice. I think they should be scary, but that's just my personal opinion.
Well, he wasn't nice if he was mad at you.
No, you didn't want to be on his bad side, all right?
You want to be his bud. Hey, one more question before we move on from Frankenstein and Mary Shelley.
Yes.
What's always amazed me, kind of more than any other aspect of it, is her age. What was her education that enabled her, to be moving in those circles at that age, and amongst the literati, literally some of the most famous writers in English literary history. What was her education that positioned her to do such a thing?
That's a great question. So during the time, women weren't really educated, at least formally, or definitely not for as long, obviously, as we educate all children now. But so she kind of got lucky. Her mother was Mary Wollstonecraft, who was a noted author and proto-feminist of the time. And her father, William Godwin, also was an author, political author, and he did some fictional stuff as well. So they were involved in this sort of literary circle at the time, and she just happened to be born into that. But because her mother actually advocated for educating women before her death, and her father also valued her mother and then wanted to sort of instill some of those values in his own children, Mary Shelley did receive some schooling, private schooling. But also I think a lot of what she did was informal, very much so like The Creature, that she had books to read, so she read them. And she had interesting conversations to listen to, so she did. So I think she was just born in the right family and the right social class that allowed her the time and the opportunity to sort of self-educate in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
fascinating.
Yeah, because back in those days, was it somewhat different to have a female author writing that kind of subject matter? Was she kind of a trailblazer in that regard?
She was definitely a trailblazer for what we would consider science fiction now. Actually, though, I consider Frankenstein to be a part of the Gothic genre, and female authors have actually dominated the Gothic genre. There were a lot of female authors because it was considered less, highbrow or not serious literature. So it was
gooey.
Yeah,
it's gooey good is what it is.
Yeah, it's romantic and scary, but not quote unquote serious. So women were actually allowed to publish, but she actually published Frankenstein anonymously during its original 1818 run.
Oh, really?
And I think part of that was that she wanted to disassociate herself from her lover and then husband, who was a famous author, but also from her parents. And I think also as a woman, I think that she wanted to be taken seriously as an author, regardless of gender and therefore genre. So she published anonymously.
Wonderful.
I had no idea that she did that. I thought for sure she was known as Mary Shelley right from the get-go. I did not know that she had to do it with the voice of anonymity, so no one knew.
She only claimed it as her own in 1823, so some time after, which is crazy. Yeah.
I have a background question, if that's okay. Before we move on to other individual monsters, and I was talking to Joel, and we were saying I don't think we've ever one time talked about dragons. So I'm really eager to get to that. But what I would love as kind of even more background is, what is your definition? What is and it doesn't have to be generic. This can be specific to you. What does it mean to be monstrous? What's the essence of a monster?
Well, I think monsters are different for different people in a lot of strange and interesting ways. But for me personally, I define a monster as any being that deviates from normal or acceptable behavior, appearance, or actions, and in doing so inspires fear in whatever they encounter. Usually for me, a monster has to have some kind of mythos or story behind it, like not just a random dog in the middle of the street. There has to be some kind of mythology around it. But yeah, I think anything and anyone can be monstrous. Basically, if you're not what's considered normal, or you don't look normal, or you don't act whatever society deems to be normal at that time.
Well, then we cover a lot of monsters at our Wednesday show, which is a true crime show.
Oh,
and yeah. There's a lot of monsters crawling around in that genre of talk then, and I would agree. I absolutely agree with your assessment. It doesn't need to be a creature from the seventh layer of hell. It can be a serial killer. It could be a monster.
And those like creature elements, or even the fangs of a vampire, or the wings of a dragon, or whatever you want to look at it that makes it more traditionally monstrous. Those are just outward indicators, usually, of like an inner monstrosity. And I think human monsters like serial killers and other true crime stuff are scary because we don't usually see.
Yeah, there's no marker to tell you that's a monster. Yeah, there's no outward marker like fangs or wings or stitches across the neck or bolts where you was shocked.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's nothing there to tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
I keep saying we're going to move on, but I keep thinking of things about Frankenstein. Because there's so many variations. What is your favorite cinematic Frankenstein's monster?
I have two. I really love the dog in Frankenweenie. I think that's an interesting way. Yeah.
Not the Robert De Niro rendition of Frankenstein, but we go to the Frankenweenie. Not a problem. I like that as well.
It's all about loss.
I thought for sure you're going to say one of the bigger Hollywood big budget ones.
My other favorite would have to be the TV show Penny Dreadful had Frankenstein's creature. Yeah, he names himself Caliban. And I think that episode where we meet Victor Frankenstein and we meet Caliban is beautiful, and not just beautifully done cinematically and fantastically acted, but we actually get to see sort of a modern, Victorian modern version of the creature, growing up in the attic and watching just this little tiny pit of the street outside. And I think that's probably what I would consider to be the most true adaptation of Mary Shelley's story.
It also begs the question, it kind of hit me in the head here for a second. Dr. Zarka, do you think that we're almost as a society at the Frankenstein tipping point where maybe we should take a harder look at this tale before we go headlong into AI or before we start cloning things in earnest or really make it mainstream? There might be a lot of valuable information in those pages. I mean, do you think that we're getting closer than ever right now to having this to be a real issue?
Oh, of course. But I think, the idea every time there's a new advance in science or tech that somehow involves life in some way, Frankenstein gets brought up. But like you said, rightfully so, because I think it asks all the right questions. I like to joke when, people say why do you do literature? Why do you do film? Why the humanities in general? I like to say science might be able to make a dinosaur, but the humanities is going to tell you why that's a really bad idea. And I think that's what stories give us. They give us sort of a space to test out what could happen. I think we do need to be really careful with what we're doing with science and with tech nowadays. I find robots terrifying. Like AI,
I do as well. I think that is something, especially like with Facebook had that chat thing, right? And it started to learn its own language.
Yes.
And then of course Terminator, Skynet, all that kind of stuff. It's a scary prospect.
Yeah, but that all speaks to Frankenstein because the creature essentially learns how to live because he's left alone. And if we're leaving this tech, to talk to itself or to talk to other code, then these kind of unexpected consequences are going to happen.
I agree. And it was brought up to me today by a good friend of mine, that's a fellow radio host. We're kind of talking about the subject matter, Frankenstein, having you on the show. And he says, Jurassic Park, if you want to go that much further out, is in a lot of ways more related to Frankenstein than you realize if you watch the tale, the progression. The monster came back.
Yeah, splicing together the DNA, which is, the modern version of what Victor Frankenstein does, sewing together animal and human body parts. Yeah, I could definitely see Jurassic Park as a kind of continuation of the themes in Frankenstein.
You know what that brings us to?
What? Dragons.
Dinosaurs.
Ooh, should we go to break first and we'll jump into dragons, Eric? Because, I don't want to cut you off, Eric. I know you love a good dragon. So we're going to go to break a little bit early. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. We're going to talk more monsters with Dr. Emily Zarka right after this.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
So Daddy's little girl thinks she's going to prom tonight with some punk who calls himself Snake.
Yeah, they grow up so fast.
Well, not if I can help it, they don't.
Okay, here's what you do. When that kid shows up, Dad's going to be doing a few chores around the house.
Huh?
It doesn't matter the chore. What's important is that it requires the use of a 60cc gas-powered chainsaw and possibly a mask.
I think it's showtime.
He's here. Dad, I want you to meet...
All right, let her in.
What's that, honey? Hi, Snake. Great to meet you. But wait, where are you going?
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to report a bear sighting.
Location.
My backyard.
Oh, your backyard. Try telling a bear that.
I did, and this bear talked back.
Talking bear, that's rich.
No, wait, it was Smokey Bear.
Smokey? Why didn't you say so?
I did say so.
Continue.
I was burning yard waste.
No, boy.
He told me to burn legally and responsibly, and to remember that if it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave.
And as always, he's right. You know, 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans. That means 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented.
Yeah, I know that now.
Thanks to me.
Actually, thanks to Smokey.
As usual, the talking bear gets all the credit. Get your Smokey on. Always burn responsibly and contact your local fire department for open burning regulations. Because 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented. Brought to you by Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at smokeybear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
And welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, right along with me,
Eric Olson.
And we are speaking with Dr. Emily Zarka tonight, and she is the host and creator and the driving force behind Monstrum, which can be found at the PBS digital network on Facebook. It's so darn cool. You can watch all these awesome episodes. Frankenstein's Monster. You can watch Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Dracula, dragons. Dr. Zarka, what's up with dragons?
Dragons are fascinating. I had such a good time researching about the dragons, and dragons have been around since time immemorial, it seems like. Every single society, or at least every continent, has some kind of dragon in their mythology.
They do. Look at Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's just chock full of it.
What is the essence of the dragon? What do all of these cultures have in common? What is the need?
Yeah, the need. I think it's about a fear of nature, about stuff we don't understand. But I do think that a lot of the way dragons look stems from either living animals, so things with wings, giant predatory birds, or alligators or snakes, but also fossils. I think a lot of the stuff we see about dragons happened when, one of our human ancestors ran into a fossil that looks nothing like any other animal on Earth right now, and decided, well, what could it be? And crafted together a monster. Some research even argues that some of the weirder features of monsters, or more versions where, they have like more lion type 4 legs or that kind of a thing, was actually maybe an alligator or some other kind of animal, happened to, be in some kind of death struggle with another animal when a flood came through, or when they fell into a sand pit or a mud pit, and then you get all the different bones mixed together, like the mammalian bones and the reptilian bones, and again, you find the fossil, you don't know what it is, you create a story, because inherently, I think as humans, we want to have answers. We don't want these things to be mysterious, because that makes them scarier.
Well, there's so many versions of dragons, too. You got your fire breathers, you got your snake type, you got your flyers.
Yep.
Where do you begin? I mean, you look at just the mythos, and not all of them breathe fire, though. That's only a few of them.
Only a few, yeah. And I mean, there's totally, the Chinese concept of the dragon is completely different from the European. So it's not just the fossils or just the predatory animals, but it's also what's going on geographically, religiously, how they view nature. But one of my favorite dragons actually didn't make it into the episode is the gargoyle, which is French for water gargler. And this version of the dragon is like this long serpentine water monster that swims up in the river and literally spews water out of its mouth.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's one of the ways they explain some unexpected flooding, but that's where we get the gargoyles that we see now, across Europe and even across America on churches or other buildings.
Really?
Those stone creatures that spit water out of their mouths comes from that basically French dragon legend.
I did not know that. I know. I thought for sure it was just a guardian of the church or what have you, because that's what I thought. But that makes complete sense now. It did come from a dragon lore. Now that I think about it, they do resemble dragons. Now I do remember the Sean Connery dragon too, but that's a whole another show right there.
Yeah, I got a lot of flack for poking fun at that, but I don't think it's the best version of a dragon for me.
Well,
or the best version of Sean Connery.
I was gonna say. I maybe Sean was hurting for money, and they're like, "Hey, we got this movie for you. Want to do it?"
Weren't enough.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the symbolism of the dragon? Why is it held in such high regard? And it's a very revered creature in especially symbolically in many of these cultures.
Well, I think at a very basic level, it can kill you very easily.
Yeah, you got that.
So you have to have respect for that, right? Like you have respect for the gods or the deities that you think can also strike you down. A dragon, if it has wings, could swoop down from the sky. If it can breathe fire, it could light you on fire. If it could spew water, I don't know, it could drown you.
Yeah.
But all dragons have, if not claws or talons, they usually have big teeth. So I think, and they're large. They're usually bigger than human size and bigger than a lot of the other predator animals that we do have on Earth. So I think right there you have to have respect for something that encompasses nature's force so much. And I think that's really what it comes down to is the dragon, because it often combines traits of different animals, mythical animals and real animals. It represents nature in so many ways, about the force of, the dragon gets mad one day and it can stomp your house into the ground, or it can light your city on fire in the same way that natural disasters happen all the time.
I wonder how many times they blame the dragons for things like that. It makes you wonder, but who wouldn't want to own a dragon?
I know.
Wouldn't that be so awesome? Like the TV show my little girl likes is How to Train Your Dragon. That's so cool, just the thought of that.
Yeah, that's such good movies. But for me, it's the size is what makes dragons really frightening. So if I were to have a dragon, I'd like to have one of the little, Harry Potter ones where they had, pull the dragon out of the bag, which when they were going to fight. That'd be my version.
Manageable dragons is what you want.
Manageable dragons.
Yeah, you don't want the giant ones you can fly on that could incinerate whole cities.
And again, that's why they're so respected. And that's why the people who can potentially control their power are so respected, because they are so destructive in various ways.
But I can definitely see, though, when you're talking about early people's uncovering these fossils, and they had to, their mind couldn't wrap. They obviously didn't know anything about dinosaurs at that point, and they couldn't wrap their minds around things. So what would you think? It's got to be a dragon. That makes complete sense.
Yeah, there are some fossils of ancient sea-dwelling dinosaurs that have 4 flippers, and if you look at the skeleton, it very easily it's like a long kind of serpentine body with a long neck, and it's got 4 limbs. That who's to say those aren't wings and 2 back legs rather than flippers? Yeah,
very, very interesting stuff. And again, you guys catch all the stuff on Facebook at the PBS Digital, and it's a digital series put out by PBS. And it's very, very interesting. And Dr. Emily Zarka is she's the keynote speaker, if you will, of it. I mean, she's the lady that puts it out there. She's the driving force. She actually does one heck of a job boiling it down for you while you're watching it, too, because I learned a lot. And one story, I got to get to it, Eric, that's near and dear to my heart is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Washington Irving's classic. Where did that all really come from? I mean, it's just such a cool story.
It is a cool story, and I think that Irving did something so American with the story, but for anyone who's watched the episode, I personally believe that he got inspiration from Celtic mythology, because I'm Irish, so this was a very fun episode for me to do to learn about my people. But Celtic tradition, they have the concept of the Dullahan, which is basically a headless horseman. But the cool thing about the Dullahan is it doesn't have to be a man, like in Irving's version, Legend of Sleepy Hollow, but it actually can be a woman, and you can have multiple of them, and they can even be riding horses that don't have heads. Sometimes even the head of the horse is floating ahead of the body, which I find fascinating. But a lot of the stories are just so weird. Like one that stood out to me was in a collection of fairy legends that was published in the early 1800s. And they talk about all the Dullahan, all these headless, people, hanging out, basically partying, dancing around, and literally bowling their brainless noodles at one another. And that is a direct quote, and I remember it because I love it so much.
Wow. Come on, that party. They lost their heads. It was so great.
Yeah. So yeah, Irving his parents were of Scottish and like Celtic descent, and then he had a Scottish nanny, and he had all these, I think he was definitely, in my opinion, exposed to this sort of folklore, and then decided to come up with something very, very American, which is why he makes the Headless Horseman in Legend of Sleepy Hollow a Hessian. They were actual German soldiers who did fight during the war. So I think that, and they were feared by people in America. So yeah, he took that. And there's, of course, the Dutch influence. Like the Sleepy Hollow is a real place. And there's some stuff there going on too. So.
It's a lot of it's almost like a melting pot of history, just that one story. And of course, if you run into one of these, I'm going to try to say it, Doodlahans, do they kill you outright, or is it like the Banshee?
No, it's not like, it's more similar to a Banshee. And actually, sometimes the Banshee and the Doodlahan appear in the same stories because they both are kind of portents of death or destruction. So you see one, and it could potentially whip your eyes out, like literally remove your eyes if you look at it. But other than maiming you a little bit, no, the Doodlahan won't kill you, which I think is fascinating. It's more if you see one, it's bad, it's terrible. You have to race home very quickly because you know something's going to happen. But the Doodlahan can also be fun. In addition to the head bowling Doodlahan, some of the legends also have one that's really cool, and again, just seems very Irish to me, or at least my experience.
Was that really, though, to keep people at home and sober?
I mean, there's something in a lot of these stories that usually starts with people talking about, I was drunk when I was on my way home, or I had eaten too much. So there's, I mean, I'm not saying correlation means causation, but I think it's just an interesting thing to note. But yeah, I think it's not just, you know, to stay home in their beds and safe and all that, but sometimes the Doodlahan women will, you know, be seductresses, so there's that going on. But one of my favorite is this guy is galloping home on his horse and is basically challenges the Doodlahan to a race. And he doesn't win the race because the Doodlahan's headless horse's head is floating in front, so of course he's going to win.
One by a nose.
Yeah, but the Doodlahan thinks that he was the first person brave enough to actually race him, that he says, you know, you'll be a great horse racer for the rest of your life, and I'll keep you safe. So in some ways, again, it's kind of about respect, right? That if you treat the animal well, you treat yourself well, then maybe the Doodlahan will watch out for you. Yeah.
So you get a buddy out of the deal.
Get a buddy, yeah. Fun racing and drinking buddy, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't have a head or anything, so you know, there's that.
Not much of a conversationalist, I wouldn't imagine.
Yeah, but sometimes they do have their heads, usually. They actually do. They're usually holding them or putting them in their pocket.
Why are they headless, though? I mean, why not just walk around like a normal person? Why does the head always have to be off?
Well, I think literally, it's definitely a metaphor for losing one's head. But also the Celtic tradition, like headhunters, that saints were getting martyred all the time with their heads cut off. And there was all this sort of religious iconography showing people without heads, the saints without their heads, which represents their divinity and how special they are. So I think that's just kind of transitions into becoming a spooky story. Because of course, if you lose your head, that's an ultimate death sentence.
Yeah,
right? I mean, we know that.
I would say so.
Super obvious, but yeah, I think that's why the Doodlahan's scary. Because even though it is human, the fact that it has its head but is still functioning like a living creature is automatically terrifying because it seems unnatural.
Yeah. Well, I would definitely go on a limb and say that is on the unnatural spectrum. Yeah.
I would hang out with the Doodlahan. The PBS Digital Studios team and my production team, Spotsman, we were chatting about this, that minus the fact that one of your loved ones might die, the Doodlahan actually seems like kind of a cool person to hang out with.
Would you really hang around the guy that's juggling his head around? Like, hey, hold this for a minute, would you?
I talk about monsters for a living, so yeah, I think that'd be great.
Let's go bowling.
Why not? Once my head, I'm okay with it.
So what's the underlying metaphor though, as far as the headlessness of it? I mean, what besides it being inherently terrifying, and we certainly know about the history, well, I mean, let's face it, most of the world involved a lot of brutality, and people were cutting off heads everywhere for a variety of reasons. So, but I don't want to steal your thunder. So tell us a bit about the meaning, the metaphor of headlessness.
Well, the metaphor of headlessness, that of course you have, some of the psychoanalysts who come into it. So of course you have to talk about the metaphor of castration, right? That it's a fear of male castration, which I think is questionable in a lot of ways. That's, again, just personally. Some people will swear against that. But I think, again, although I hate keep saying it's just because it's unnatural, it's just so immediately arresting, the very same way like a dragon is or Frankenstein's creature is. It looks so abnormal that you have to pause. You have to stop, or you have to run away in fear. But for me, I think the metaphor of the headlessness also comes from the potential that there's life, like a fear of that if there is something that exists after death, that might not be, a paradise or even a hell. It might be being stuck on Earth carrying around your disembodied head.
Which would suck.
That would be horrible.
Heads, I think, are pretty heavy, so there's that too.
So you definitely don't want to die by decapitation of the head. That's a really bad way to go.
You're probably not coming back.
It's a lot of labor. It's a lot of labor carrying that thing around.
Yeah.
So interesting. Well, we got vampires, and we got about 15 minutes. So that it's short, but
yes. Vampires.
Oh
the
my!
Seductive bloodsuckers.
Yeah, let's dig into that one. That's a whole evening's full, of course. But
of course. No, the undead are my absolute favorite category of monsters. I mean, this is really one of the things that got me started on monsters, in an academic or professional sense. Is I wrote a lot, and you can even see that from the list of publications and conferences stuff you've read about me. But I just love the undead. There's something about the reanimated human corpse that I just find inherently fascinating. And pretty much every culture has some kind of reanimated corpse walking around being monstrous.
Damn revenants.
Yep. Yeah. So, but the vampire's special. I mean, that's seductive and highly sexually charged. Mm-hmm. So it's a much different than, let's just say, a lumbering zombie. It's something that, could be amongst the masses and use its power of animal magnetism to get young maidens to fall in love with it.
And it's my opinion, at least from my research, I think proves this, that vampires have always been sexual or had a seductive element, although before Dracula, it was usually conceived as bad, you didn't want to fall under the gaze of a Dracula, not because it would fall in love with you, but because it would rip your throat out, essentially.
Yeah, it'd kill you.
But I think there's two major reasons why the vampire is associated with sex and sexuality. Is one, they usually prey at night. Mm-hmm. So, there's something about the covert darkness and, hidden lovers' trysts going on that, again, trying to police some of that occurring or happening. But I also think that it's the penetrative nature of how they attack their victims. I mean, there's something inherently sexual in very obvious metaphors about having this sharp-pointed thing penetrating through human flesh that can be both terrifying and powerful, but also enjoyable in some vampire accounts.
Some have told me it's a veiled representation of sex. Back in the day, in Victorian times, they couldn't overtly write about that, where the fangs, where I'm going with that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
So
and I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think at least starting with the Romantic period, so around, late 1700s, I think that the vampires just became sexual. Yeah, I think not just because of repressed sexuality, but you're absolutely right. The inability for people, including women, because a lot of female Gothic writers wrote about the undead and wrote about vampires. I think that it was it was like a loophole, a literary loophole to talk about sex and desire.
Well, let's talk about the granddaddy of them all, so to speak, and that is Dracula himself, Bram Stoker's. Bram Stoker wrote Dracula, and it's just kept on going and going and going. But tell us a little bit about Bram. What was he like? I mean, as a guy.
So Bram, I actually don't know as much about Bram as I do about some of the other authors, but I do know that he had started writing his vampire story long before he even encountered the name Dracula. But he was an Irish author, so again, one of my peoples. And he actually used to work for the theater. So he used to work for a very famous actor, Irving, and that he sort of, I think, was exposed to the melodrama of the theater and a lot of Gothic plays and some other things going on there. So it seemed, I think, easier for him to sort of transition into writing his own sort of spooky story. And what I think Stoker did is he took, hundreds of years of vampire legends from across the world, including folklore, in addition to other written texts, and he clumped everything together. So yeah, he made the vampire that we recognize today because he was the first one to take all the different traits and sort of put them into one creature and make him a rich noble and have him prowling around the countryside going after, innocent maidens.
Yeah. Well,
and even not so innocent.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, Lucy. Yeah.
Yeah. So he writes Dracula. I mean, that is the most successful vampire, novel of all time. And I can't even count on both hands how many different vampire Dracula movies I've seen. I think just about every horror actor of any kind of real notoriety's at least played Dracula one time. And why? Well, I mean, obviously, why is it still popular today, though? I mean, if we all can see through the obvious sexual overtones of the Victorian era, why are we still enamored with it today when the veil has been ripped off of sexuality? It's out there, and so that kind of thing.
I don't know, though. I don't know if I would agree that the veil has been completely ripped off. I think we still demonize or even make monstrous a lot of forms and expressions of sexuality. And I mean, we can't ignore the fact that Twilight began as not Twilight. It was 50 Shades of Grey began as fan fiction of Twilight. That there's so much of that sexual tension undertone that it became one of the most dominant, sex erotic texts in the culture. 50 Shades of Grey, which I think is fascinating. But no, I think that we're still very interested in exploring not just sexuality, but there's the allure of the vampire.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like naughty to want to like be bitten by vampires. Some people do identify as vampires, which is a whole nother fascinating topic.
Oh yeah, we've talked about that before on the show, and that's interesting. And just the mindset. In fact, we just profiled a young man that was a killer that thought that he was a vampire, and what a fascinating culture that is when you really dig into it, and, when you really take a bite out of that culture. It's really quite fascinating.
No, it is, and I think that the vampire is unique, that a lot of people don't necessarily, you don't like grow up wanting to be a zombie, because usually they're like gross and falling apart and involves eating, entire humans. But I think because of Dracula and because of all the movies and the other stories that have risen from the idea of the vampire being seductive and attractive, and I think eternal youth, we can't ignore that part of the story either, that I think a lot of people want to be able to live not only forever, but to live at the best health that they can possibly. And a lot of more modern vampire myths offer that. So that's also attractive.
That's so true. So true. But we would not be a radio show if we didn't ask two main questions. Number one, we are a paranormal show, Have you ever had a paranormal experience of your own? Have you come close to seeing a ghost or experienced anything monstrous out there?
I have, actually.
Really?
Yes, I have. So I haven't seen a ghost, that I never actually saw her. But long story short, my grandparents live in this beautiful old home, and they had a lot of kids. My dad's one of 7. So they had to convert their attic into additional bedrooms. And when I was growing up, all the grandchildren, all the girls wanted to sleep in this one room in the attic, because it was very frilly and feminine and kind of sequestered and had like an antique vanity table and, this cast iron bed. So I, ever since I was young, would sleep in that bed and know in my soul that if I opened my eyes that I would see a young girl with long dark hair wearing a long white nightgown staring at me. I knew for a fact I would see her. And even today, I don't think I actually want to ever see a ghost, like a fully formed ghost, because I think they're scary.
I thought for sure you'd say, and then I opened my eyes, and it was my weird uncle. No.
So of course I thought that, I'm just have an overactive imagination. There's nothing, it's nothing. So flash forward to probably about 15 years after this first started happening. And I'm sitting at a table with 2 of my other female cousins and my uncle. And we were talking about just weird things that had happened in the house. And I said, oh, well, I always thought when I was sleeping in the princess room, which is what we called it, I always thought that I was being watched. And one of my cousins goes, by the girl with the long hair, my other cousin, and the white nightgown. And we'd never talked about it before. So
Get out of here.
Yeah. So we've experienced her. And then my uncle told us that the family that lived in the house beforehand did have a daughter that died from illness in the hospital. So she didn't die in the house, but I'm a firm believer that ghosts go back where they have, the most emotional connection.
Sure.
So
sure.
She's still there.
Do you ever feel the need to dig into that story further and get to know who the girl was and maybe find out her backstory?
Yeah, I would actually really like to, because I think it's, obviously what I love about monsters, and I'm doing my work I am right now, I think it'd be really cool to, find out more about the history. And that's what all monsters, I think, boil down to, is you get to learn about the history of the society and the culture, and even a person, in the case of ghosts, that you might not have known before, which I think is really cool. And she did touch me once. But again, I didn't open my eyes because I didn't want to see her. But I just said very nicely, like, thank you.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Go away now. Thank you. Thank you very much. But
no,
go
I
away.
woke up. I was taking a nap in the room because, of course, I'm going to still sleep in the room with the ghost.
Yeah.
And I woke up because I felt this pressure on my leg. And it was very cliche. Like, it was much colder than the rest of my body. And I knew it was her. I felt it. I felt that it was her.
Oh.
So, yeah.
That is cool. I mean, it's cool. Cool to the touch, but it's cool that you had that experience in a lot of ways, because it also reaffirms that there's life after the death for you as well. You
exactly.
Saw that there's more.
If anything, I believe in energies, so I don't think, my personal belief is that you don't just go from something to nothing. So,
how do ghosts fit into the monster pantheon?
Ooh, yeah. Ghosts are fat. I mean, there's all different kinds of ghosts. Like, you can have malevolent ghosts, and you can have poltergeists, right? Or you can have, the little lost child who's just trying to get a proper burial. But I think ghosts are scary in some ways, but not as scary as some other monsters for me personally, because usually they don't pose a physical threat, but also they usually look like humans. So it's more easy for us to identify as the ghost. Because that could potentially be all of us. But that's also where the fear comes from, right? It's that, what if this is going to be it? That I have to, float around in the human realm forever. But I like to joke with my friends that if I come back to haunt, I hope I just, play jokes. Just show up and go, boo.
Yeah.
And, float away. Yeah.
I have a question that combines our latest topic with our original topic. So, did the creature, Frankenstein's creature, did he have a soul?
Ooh. I believe that he had a soul, because I actually don't think that I don't classify the creature as undead. And people have argued this with me many a time, but it's my belief that his life was his first one. Because Victor Frankenstein took body parts from both humans and animals. So for me, my definition of the undead, you can't be undead if you've never lived before. So since that conglomeration of parts didn't exist in that one body before together, I think that, he came to life for the very first time. And my concept of life, of course he has a soul.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a newborn. He's just man-made newborn. That's all.
I will admit that I've cried reading the scene in the original Frankenstein where he literally reaches out to Victor, to his creator, to the only other living thing he knows. Yeah. And Victor runs from him. I can't imagine how traumatic that would be.
Oh, yeah. It's like if you were to shun your children, when they're reaching out for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be an absolutely terrifying.
And not just any time they're reaching out for you, but the first time they're reaching out for you.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely correct.
So the first contact he knew was rejection. So, of course, that's what I think Frankenstein is about, right? Is what makes a monster.
Yeah, should be Frankenstein 2.
Can you tell us the other two topics that have yet to come out?
Yes, I can. I'm allowed to tell you the two. I'm very excited. So the next one coming out is actually going to be about the Kraken.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Release the Kraken!
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, don't worry. I have multiple Zeus yelling, release the Kraken images in there. It's great. Both the original and, the Liam, what's-his-face version. But Yeah, the Kraken's coming up, and I personally am terrified of giant squid, and now even more so I am after the research I did with that episode. And then the final one is I noticed that we hadn't really been talking a lot about female monsters, so we are actually, the final episode is about Medusa.
Oh, very cool.
Looking at the
awesome.
original myth and her monstrosity being inherently female.
Gotcha. Very, very awesome stuff. Again, you can catch all this on Facebook. It's PBS digital series that's streaming through I'm still jazzed. It's PBS, and of course, a lot of people were saying, well, that's Nova and that's NewsHour and stuff. But no, I mean, it's really, really awesome. Definitely take a peek. Of course, the show is Monstrum, and Dr. Emily Zarka is the driving force behind that. So absolutely check it out. I think you guys will all be pleasantly surprised. A lot of PBS stuff I love anyway, though. I mean, we've had other people from PBS on, and they've always just knocked out of the park. Wonderful.
It's a great community. Yeah, I'm very lucky.
It really is. They have absolutely awesome community of people over there. And again, check it out. Check it out, Monstrum. Take care of each other, love each other. And hey, why don't you pick up Mary Shelley's Frankenstein one more time? Give it another read. Thank you for listening to this edition of After Hours AM, and please remember to like us on Facebook and also follow us over on Twitter.